Hersam Acorn newspapers, publishers of the Greenwich Post, New Canaan Advertiser, the Darien Times, the Ridgefield Press, the Weston Forum, the Wilton Bulletin, the Reading Pilot, the Lewisboro Ledger, the Monroe Courier, the Eastern Courier, the Trumbull Times, Fairfield Sun, Shelton Herald, the Stratford Star, the Milford Mirror, and the Valley Gazette.
Hersam, Acorn, and HANradio.com. The leader in local news, sports, arts, and entertainment in southwestern Connecticut.
I'm John KOVACH. I'm a newspaper editor. I'm a radio announcer. I'm a high school football coach. And since I was old enough to stand on the side of a stream next to my dad, I've been an angler. I've fished with bait, lures, and flies. I've fished with spinning gear, fly rods, jigging poles, and tip-ups. I've stood on ice, waded rapids, and been tossed about the deck of a boat. And I want you to love fishing, be it freshwater or salt, heavy flows, high seas, or cutting through a foot of ice, as much as I do, no matter what the quarry, no matter the tactics, no matter the chosen tackle. Welcome to Yankee Fisherman on HANradio.com.
And welcome to a special Yankee Fisherman on HAN.com presented by the Dock Shop, because for the first time you can see what we're doing. This is the first. From this point on, we will be video streaming Yankee Fisherman, either from the studio as we're doing today, or we will do it from locations in the field. I have a couple of trips already planned to get film that we're going to use from, say, the Catskill Fly Fishing Center and Museum. We're going to one of their events. We're going to the Crossroads Angling Auction in Bud Lake, New Jersey in April. We're going to go out and do some filming of fishing derbies, tournaments. We've got a lot of plans, and now it involves video, and it's a very exciting day for me as Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop on HANradio.com, takes its next step. John KOVACH with you, Donald Lang at the controls, Marty Hersam running the video end of it, Jim TURECEK joining us in studio, friend of the show. This is his second trip on. We're going to get you ready for trout season as the weather warms up. Jim's going to show us how to tie one of his flies. We're going to just talk fishing for a while. I want to take a minute and just acknowledge an event that I attended the other night up in Madison. Great job by Toby Lipinski, Rob Cohn, who was on with us, on a benefit for the son of the late Tony Stetsko, who we lost far too young. And this is to start a college fund for his son Anton, who's already showing some promise as a fisherman. He's 7. About 80 people, maybe pushing 100, at the church in Madison for an event. We heard Crazy Alberto Nee of Tactical Angler. We heard Mike Laptu talk, both tremendous presentations. Both left us with little pearls of wisdom in addition to their usual fishing presentations. Mike showing a picture of Tony that he had caught, and yeah, there was the picture of Tony with what was a world record. And then there was a picture of Tony with a striper that was probably about the size of a small trout. Mike said it's not always about the size. Sometimes it's about the sunsets. And he's right. And it's about getting out there, and it's about appreciating things. And Alberto told us to just always remember your friends and be there for your friends. And he was that night, and he did a great job. And it was a very moving event to attend. And hopefully we paid a fitting tribute to Tony, and we raised some funds for his son's college fund. And again, great job by Toby and Rob and all the people who helped set that up. We're getting ready for trout season, opening day. Jim TURECEK joining us.
Thank you.
Jim, what are your thoughts on the move of opening day to April 11th?
It's going to be a lot cooler fishing this year, that's for sure.
First complaint I heard from somebody.
Well, I never stop fishing, so opening day really doesn't mean much to a lot of people.
It doesn't. If you're one of the people who uses the TMAs, who's out there all the time, for me it's a day I usually try to avoid
Yes.
because you can't move.
No, there's too many people that day.
It's too many guys beating on water poorly
Right.
that I'd rather go the day before or 2 days before, go to one of the TMAs, and go a couple of days after, let things recover.
Right.
Because as big a deal as it is to the state to have that many anglers lining the sides, there's people out that day that's the only day they're going to do it.
Right. They just go out to catch a few fish for opening day. If they don't catch their limit, they don't go out again.
Have you been out to any of the TMAs of late?
Oh, a number of times. Fishing has been slow and tough because water temperatures have been 33 to 35 degrees. So basically you have to hit the fish in the nose because they're not going to move to feed. Being cold-blooded, they're very lethargic.
So it's all reaction territorial strikes then. They're not really looking for a meal?
They're not, because nothing is really happening. Normally by this time of year, the Capnia and Alacapnia stoneflies, the little tiny black stones, are coming off. They haven't started yet this year. Some of the chironomids have been coming off, but they're so small they're really not that much of a big prey species.
It's not worth the effort to go get it.
No. Yeah. They've been feeding on the bigger, the Hendricksons, the stoneflies, the March Browns. Excuse me if I slip into Latin because of my background. That's easier than
I have
me,
no
but
problem with it. You've been doing this long enough. And Jim was with us before talking about the knives that he makes, which are just tremendous. I mean, he's an instructor, he's a guide, he's a tyer. He comes up with theories and philosophies. He fishes for everything. He's done this for decades long. He's done this probably longer than I've been around.
Well, it's been just over 50 years of fly fishing experience, and I've been working as a guide and instructor of fly fishing and tying for the last 40 years.
Do you think the earlier opening day, and again, it's going to be the second Saturday in April now instead of the third, is the difference in temperature going to be enough to make a difference in the fishing conditions? Is that going to vary year to year?
That'll vary year to year. This year, because there's still so much snow on the ground and the runoff, it's making the water much colder. For bait fishermen, it won't make that big a deal. But for fly fishermen, you're going to have to work a little more precisely. You're going to have to lose more flies because if you're not right on the bottom, you're not going to be catching too many fish. So it's going to be a little harder for fly fishermen. And I think there's going to be a lot more people on streams because a number of the lakes aren't thawed yet and probably won't be by April 11th.
No, I mean, we're supposed to get some rain this weekend. We're taping this show, streaming it live on March 26th, the first live streaming edition of Yankee Fisherman. We're supposed to get some rain this weekend, but I don't see when you're 18, 20 inches of ice on some of these lakes that they're going to be open. And I wonder about access to some of the streams even.
Oh, I have actually, to fish some of the places, I've been using snowshoes to get to the stream side. It's just easier than walking through knee-deep snow. It's been a tough year to get out this winter.
It really has. I mean, if you're somebody who enjoys winter fishing, and I do because of the solitude, there's a pristine quality
right
to the wilderness because it's white, it's quiet, the snow might be falling. Yeah, all right, your guides freeze up, deal with it.
Right, exactly.
But it's a beautiful time to fish if you're properly dressed and prepare for it. There was so much snow that unless you have snowshoes like you, that getting there is impossible.
Right, you couldn't get down to the river. It was really tough. I talked to one friend of mine who went out. He walked down, got to the river, broke through the snow, fell face forward into the river, picked himself back up, went back to the car, and went home. makes for a short trip.
Does make for a short trip. I know there wasn't that much, and it's been so cold as well. I mean, you had single-digit temperature for days, if not weeks on end.
Right, right.
So there couldn't have been that much activity life-wise in the aquatic ecosystem.
Well, and even a lot of the streams were frozen over.
Right.
I mean, I had clients who normally go out with me this time of year who, you know, the rivers they wanted to fish, we couldn't get to because pools were frozen over. We were joking, though, this winter we had the ultimate in natural strike indicator because one of the knots picked up ice, and the ice just kept freezing every time you'd lift the rod, and ended up with an ice ball as a strike indicator. Tough to see, though.
If you could package it, though.
Right, right.
If you could package that.
Right. But come June, they don't last long.
No, they do not. No, they do not. And I think everybody's kind of waiting for June. DEEP is stocking the TMAs now. They're starting to ramp that up. But we had Tim Berry on, and he said that it's affected them because there's sections they can't get to where they usually stock because of the snow.
Right. It's going to be sparse fishing, I think, on opening day because they still can't get to a lot of places.
They can't, and nor can the fishermen. And what I'm afraid of is you're going to have fewer places that are stocked, and you're going to have fewer places that are accessible, and then you're going to have more people standing on each other's shoulders.
Right. It's going to be mobbed.
Yeah.
I mean, normally I don't fish on weekends. I'm a weekday fisherman. I mean, luckily I have the ability to do that, and I try to convince clients to take a day off.
My boss is outside the window, so I can't say anything about weekday fishing.
Of those sick days?
Some might be sick days. Maybe the occasional meeting.
I got caught like that one time, called in sick to work, did a radio interview, and the fella asked me how I did fishing that day, and I told him good, and went in, and my boss was not pleased, which is... Well, you got to have a sense of humor.
Exactly. Deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Deal with it. 12 after the hour. John KOVACH with you, Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop, streaming on the Hersam Acorn network for the first time. Really excited about it, and it allows us to do more things. We'll be able to do some technique demonstrations. We'll be able to do ties, which we're going to do in a little bit with Jim. It's going to enable us to do road trips like we plan to take up to the Catskill Fly Fishing Center April 11th to their big event, down to the Crossroads auction. There's a bass tour that we taped a segment about that we're going to play in the very near future, and go to one of their events and do some video. There's just a lot that we can do, and I think it really takes the show to the next level. And it gives me a reason to go out. And as long as I take a camera, I am working.
You're working.
I am working.
Exactly.
I'll let you know, Jim, when I'm going to be out working.
Right.
Because we got to try some of these things.
Oh, definitely.
You have to see what works. You have to see what they're hitting on.
Exactly.
I can't. And it's one of the reasons this show works is because I'm smart enough to know that I'm not to be, I'm not some great fisherman. I just have access to microphones and the ability to get great fishermen like you to come on and talk about it.
Right.
I'm not I'm not smart enough to sit here and try to BS people into thinking you should do what I do, because you really shouldn't.
Right. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of time, and a good knowledge of the prey species.
Have you? And I know you've spent a tremendous amount of time underwater studying the habits of underwater insects and trout,
yes,
among other species. Have you done it in a season that was as cold as what we're coming out of?
No. When water's 30 degrees, 35 degrees, I don't get under the water. Not unless I slip and get there.
We've all been there.
But I still do every time I fish. I always start by doing a very quick entomological survey and just use a nymph net, kick up some rocks, and see what's there. And one of the things that I've noticed, because it's been so cold this year, is virtually all the insects, other than the stoneflies, are smaller than they normally are this time of year. Because they're cold-blooded also, they're not growing as quickly. Anything cold-blooded is affected by the cold. So trout didn't grow as fast this winter. The insects aren't maturing as fast. They said things like the little winter stones haven't even shown yet. Normally by this time, I keep a very careful journal, and by this time last year, I already had the Tenonopteryx, the fluttering stones, coming off the stream next to my house. Whereas this year, as I said before, it's just been the little chironomids coming off, but no stones at all. From looking in that brook also, I was there yesterday running some nymph surveys, and the water was 34 degrees. The water was so cold when I was nymphing, I actually picked up a brook trout in the net because he was too slow to get out of the way. Normally, you don't do that. This fish just sort of laid there, probably enjoyed the warm air.
Yeah. I've never heard of that happening. Has that ever happened to you before?
No.
I mean, I've never, because they have this sense of the net coming at them, and
right, and they get out of the way.
They're out of there. I mean, you can be as stealthy as you think you're being.
Right. And
I've never heard of one being that lethargic.
No, and these are little native brook trout that are in this brook, and they just... The interesting thing is, on some of the sunny days we've had, I've seen them in the real shallow areas because the bottom warms up from the sun. So it will make the bugs a little more active, so it's easier for them to feed. But literally, they were in 3-4 inches of water.
Wow!
Just trying to get a little warmth up because it is cold.
It is, and it's going to take more time because the runoff, the melt-off, still is cold, and that's lowering the temperature as it goes in.
Right.
It's not going to warm up as fast as the air temperature.
No. I mean, it's going to take some weeks before the water temperature gets up. All this snow has to melt. And, we run into the problem, especially with bigger rivers. There's a lot more snow further north, too. So there's going to be serious runoff. They're going to be high. They're going to be muddy. It's going to be tough.
Am I crazy to say it's going to be mid-May before we actually are in trout fishing weather?
Probably.
I mean, I would think it has to be.
It's going to take, for the amount of snow we have. I mean, I live on a dead-end street. The pile of snow at the end of my street's about 8 feet high. So it's going to take till end of May or end of April for that to melt anyway. It's going to be a cold year this year. I mean, I took a sample. I teach a knife class down in Milford, and I stopped by Gulf to take a sample. And the water temperature at Gulf Beach was 37 degrees. That's a long time before any stripers are going to hit Long Island Sound.
That is a very long time, and that's a topic we're going to have you back on as the weather warms up to talk striper and saltwater fishing. We're going to focus today on Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop, on trout fishing, early season trout fishing. Again, this is the first streaming edition of Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop. We're going to step out and take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about flies, fly selection. Jim is going to demonstrate a tie for us. You are listening to and watching Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop on HANradio.com.
Just because it's no longer boat or beach season, you don't have to abandon your lifestyle. At the Dock Shop, it's beach season all year long. The Dock Shop has just loaded up with many new products that are perfect for the gift-giving season. Fishing tackle, jewelry, nautical-themed accessories, lighting, tableware, and more. Are you heading out for a tropical winter getaway? Come by the Dock Shop and check out styles by Margaritaville Apparel, Montauk Tackle, Game Guard, and others. Stop in at the Dock Shop and enjoy the New England coast all year long. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the New England coast, this is a unique place to shop. The Doc Shop, 51 Tokenique Road, Darien. DocShop.com.
Alliance. We are an industry leader in coordinating transportation for large events such as corporate road shows, conferences, and special events. Our team of experts understands the dynamics and logistics of high-pressure situations and complex arrangements, all within a rapidly changing environment. Since 1999, we have added charter jets, event management, and personal protection to our range of services. Mention this ad for $25 off your next round-trip reservation. Alliance and you. Together, we can achieve the extraordinary. 855-546-6996 or alliancelimo.com.
It's Lots of Characters, specializing in children's birthday parties with your child's favorite characters. When you want to party hardy, when you need to celebrate, call us, we won't be late. We help create lasting memories for you and your child on their special day. Call us at 203-590-1791 or visit our website at lotsofcharacters.org for more information and to see our party packages. Lots of Characters, 203-590-1791 or online at lotsofcharacters.org.
This is Sig Hansen from Deadliest Catch. You're listening to Yankee Fisherman on HANradio.com.
Welcome back to Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Doc Shop, HANradio.com, and the Hersam Acorn Network as we come to you via video, live streaming. John KOVACH, Don Eng on the radio controls, Marty Hersam on the video controls, Jim TURECEK in studio with us. We're talking trout fishing, early season, cold weather, and now we're going to talk something that he knows a tremendous amount about as well, and that is flies. Yes. And you're going to tie for us. Now, what pattern are you going to show us today, Jim?
Today I'm going to show you a soft tackle pattern. Soft tackles are the oldest pattern. The Macedonians were using soft tackles. They developed them about 2,000 years ago. And probably 10 minutes later, the exaggeration of how many fish they caught on them was developed. But
before the first one was finished, they had caught a 20-inch.
Exactly. Exactly. The nice thing with soft tackles is by changing your body color, you can imitate a number of different insects, especially early season fish who are freshly stocked. They're not the smartest thing in the world because they don't really know what to eat yet. You know, they're used to eating Purina pellets.
Right.
So the soft tackle pattern gives you movement. It looks enough like the insects that are around that they will start eating them. They, by changing your body colors, for instance, the standard hare's ear to imitate Hendrickson's, the amber color to imitate the Stenonemas, which are the different March browns, the black and claret mix to imitate the Isonychia, either the bicolors or the Sadleris, which are the Dun variants. You can attract a lot of fish. The trick is getting the right size for the imitation. And normally, I always start with a very quick nymph survey, which will immediately tell you the size and color of the predominant nymphs in the area. So it's very easy to figure it out.
I'm going to ask you a question because it's based on observations that I've run into. And I've been places where I've seen just a ton of March brown activity and no trout feeding on them. And I cannot for the life of me figure it out because you think they would be feeding on the most abundant source at that time.
Not always. A lot of times the reason you won't see them taking, for instance, the adults, the dry flies, is because they're feeding on the emergers or the nymphs that are just starting to, break their nymphal cases. Any predatory species is an opportunistic feeder. Whatever the easiest thing to eat is what they're going to feed on. So instead of chasing the dry flies and working hard to catch the adults, it's just easier to pick the nymphs off or pick the emergers off.
So are there cases where guys like me might rush to put a dry on because I'm seeing adult activity, and I'd be better off staying with the nymph or the wet or the soft tackle?
A soft tackle and swinging it below the surface because they're probably feeding there. Or you could run into cases, the West Branch of the Farmington is a prime example of this. You will get a blanket hatch of sulfurs coming off, millions of sulfurs. You see rises and everybody puts on a sulfur. Well, if you observe very, very carefully, what you'll notice is that in the middle of this sulfur hatch, there's a hatch of something else bigger coming off, like a March brown, and they're feeding on those in among all the other sulfurs. So observation is very important in fly fishing. You know, it's far too many people choose a fly based on an article versus the actual, what's actually going on. I had a prime example of that, of a magazine ran one of my fly designs. Well, the year was for a large bunker pattern, but there were no big bunkers in Long Island Sound that year. So I saw a bunch of guys fishing it. I developed it. I wasn't fishing it because there were no big bunkers around.
But it said in the magazine to fish it.
It was a great fly. It caught fish. The thing people have to remember is neither the predatory species we're fishing for or the prey species we're imitating have changed one bit in the last 1,200 years. It's just knowing what's going on with the prey species, and that's how you catch fish. It's not some new gizmo or new gadget or anything like that, or new fly. It's the same bait. Nothing has changed. It's just proper presentation and knowing what to do.
How many of us do you think, and I'll plead guilty to not, take the time to do the nymph survey like you do?
I've never seen anybody else doing one, and I'm on the water 200 times a year. My regular clients are the only ones you'll see regularly doing it, because it eliminates the idea of opening a fly box and saying, oh, this one looks nice.
And that's how so many of us, myself included, do it. Here's my pretty fly box.
Right.
What's flying around? Now, just what's flying around might not be what's making its way to the surface.
Exactly.
And what's making its way through the water column to where they're feeding.
Right.
But I'm going to hold my fly box open and look at all the pretty flies and see what's flying around, because that's got to be what they're hitting on. Right. No question.
Right, exactly. 90% of a trout's diet is underwater, and that's where you want to concentrate on.
And that's what we'll do with this fly you're going to show us.
Which is why soft tackles, you always want to tie them both with weight, either a bead. I like to use a bead on them just because then I could visually tell which one's weighted, which one's not.
And that's why I hate using the under body weight, and then I'm just like, because then you get distracted or you get lazy, you don't properly mark them, and then you're like, which one's heavier?
Right.
Which one have I got? Is this the weighted? Is this the... I'd rather have a bead on it.
For nymphs, I avoid beads like the plague, because you've never seen any nymph with a big gold ball on him.
What about with a black or...
Still, you get better. The problem with the nymph is the way you're dead drifting a nymph. With a bead on it, it tends to fall head first and doesn't look natural.
Yeah.
Those I will always use weight on. And I just store them in two different sections of the fly box.
Okay.
And whereas with these, because the soft tackle will lay back over the bead, it sort of camouflages the bead. It gives it a little bit of flash, but not It's not too bright.
Right, this was when I first started tying. It was right after I started fishing. It's the early 2000s, and my brother got me the Orvis set.
Right.
And you do it, but by Tom Rosenbauer, who we've had on, and it's a great starter thing. And I saw the bead head, and then I was so proud of myself because hey, why don't we put the hackle over top of the bead and kind of hide it?
Right.
And
right.
it's something I've stuck with at that time. And like
Right.
you said, I think it lets you get a flash, but it's not a beacon.
Right, exactly. It's not, because especially in clear water and low water, a bright flash will literally scare fish.
Yes.
And I have found, last year as an example, was fishing in the Hammonasset River, fell in front of me, was fishing a nymph with a bead head, went through a run, didn't do anything. I was fishing the same nymph without the bead heads, and I caught trout. Now, whether also, too, I was closer to the bottom, or...
Your drift might have been a little better.
Right.
Your presentation could be slightly different.
Right.
The bead might have woke them up.
Yeah. It, you never really know. That's the whole thing. That's what, after 50 years of fly fishing, I've realized everything that you think makes a difference, the next two fish show you it doesn't.
If you knew you'd master it and the learning curve would be a straight line.
It wouldn't be fun anymore.
It wouldn't be fun anymore.
No.
Absolutely not. So what are you going to tie for us here?
Okay, what we're going to tie here is a hare's ear soft hackle. To start, you always want to debarb your hook if it's not already debarred, for two reasons. One, it comes out of the fish a lot easier when you fish catch and release. And two, when you hit yourself in the back of the neck in the wind, it comes out easier. You want to start by sliding your bead on.
And that small side to the eye. Small hole to the eye?
Well, it really doesn't matter in this case because it's not back and you're tying it in place anyway.
Okay.
So you start by wrapping a layer of thread partway down the hook shank. Push your bead up so it's about 25, 30 thousandths of an inch from the eye of the hook, and then go back and forth over the bead a few times. What this will do is tie the bead in place so it doesn't slide around on the hook shank. And then bring your thread right to the bend of the hook. One thing that's very important when you're tying with a bobber, always keep the distance between the hook and the bobber an inch or a hair more.
I struggle with that because I end up with varying lengths. Am I changing the tension?
You're not only changing the tension, if you've got this much thread out, you're making great big circles and you waste a lot of time. If you keep it close, you can see how much quicker you can tie.
Yeah,
it's a lot faster.
Much more efficient movement, and it's a much cleaner tie. You're not fighting slack the whole way.
And you have better control of where you're putting your thread. Because the whole thing with fly tying is you don't want to build up too much thread. And 2 or 3 good tight wraps will hold as good as 6 bad wraps. So to start, this fly has a tail of rabbit guard hairs. So you just clip a little off. You want the tail length approximately half the body length. Pinch it on. A couple of soft loops just to hold it in place. A couple of tight wraps and let it go. Never let go of your material till you've put the tight wraps on.
Now, if it starts to spin on you, force it, loosen up, and adjust it, retighten?
Unwrap, do it again.
Unwrap it in its entirety.
Yes. Usually, if you pinch it good and tight, put 2 soft loops, pull it down snug, then 2 tight loops, it's not going to go anywhere. The next step on this pattern is a small gold rib. This is very fine oval tinsel. Oops. that's a problem. I hurt my finger last week and been having issues with breaking thread, hooking it on the splint.
Ah, see, I can do it without the splint. And I like that method for running because I'm one trying to get the
oh yeah, they sell
there.
all kinds of
Oh,
fancy
yeah.
little gizmos. No, that's, you know, when I started this 50 some odd years ago, they didn't have those fancy gizmos. You put the end in, you inhaled it.
Which is so much easier than...
And it's quicker. You know, they have all these different tools and gadgets, none of which actually help. One thing that's very important that you always want is a spring on your vise. And what this spring does is allow you to hold materials. So now once you tie your tail on and your rib, you want to put on a half hitch or a whip finish.
So you're whip finishing that midway through now, or not even midway
Not
through.
even, because I'm going to dub next. And when you dub, you're going to be messing with your tension. So you always want to tie off before you dub.
I've learned more about fly tying in the last 5 minutes than I think I ever have. I know, absolutely true.
Like I said, I've been doing this for by the time I was 11 years old, my father and my brother turned over all their fly tying material to me because they said, you tie better than we do, you tie faster than we do, and take all our stuff and we'll just tell you what you need. Now the next step is dubbing. One of the tricks with dubbing is I will always pre-blend a whole bag of dubbing. I use an old blender. Went to a secondhand store, bought a blender, and
I use a coffee grinder.
yeah, it works fine. The trick is, whatever you're using, you have to make sure you dull the blades. You don't want to chop the hair, you want to mix the hair.
And you don't ever use it for coffee again after
No.
you've blended dubbing.
And don't ever take the top off while it's still spinning.
No.
It makes this rather interesting looking volcano of fur. And so the next step is your dubbing.
We should demonstrate. We should, now we're doing video, we should do all the bad things that can happen.
I'll bring in my big fur blender and we can fill this room with fur.
We could do a lot of damage.
The next step, take a tiny pinch of dubbing, lay it on your thread, and roll it between your fingers. And you literally roll it right around the thread. Take another tiny pinch, roll it, overlap it, tiny pinch, roll it, and overlap it. Now, one of the most important things with dubbing is a proper dubbing loop. Because if you just put dubbing on like this, you get a very delicate fly that doesn't stand up. Put your finger a couple inches below the end of the dubbing. Bring your thread back where you started from. And now bring your thread up to right behind the bead. Grab the end of the thread and spin it between your fingers. So now what you've done is tied that dubbing in between two pieces of thread.
Now, there's a million gadgets for creating the dubbing loop. None of them that I can use with any dexterity. And I just watched you do with your finger what has befuddled me about dubbing loops since I became tying.
It's rolling. The trick is, one of the things to practice actually to become a better dubber is take a tiny pinch of dubbing fur and just practice rolling it in between your fingers to create a little yarn. It takes practice. Now the next step is to wrap your dubbing.
And you're using hackle pliers there to hold the dubbing loop in place.
Yeah, that's just because the splint on my left hand, normally I will pass this way. It makes it quicker.
I can see that.
But with this finger, it's been getting in the way.
I appreciate you coming in with a splint on your finger and tying flies.
I I've been doing that because it's been sort of dangerous working on any machinery with a splint on.
I was going to say it's impacted the knife making, I would assume.
A little bit. Not that bad. Okay, now whenever you get to tie something off, always change it so you're holding that material in your front hand. Take the back hand, drop the thread over loose twice, pull it down snug, trim the excess, and a couple of tight wraps. Next step is take your rib and bring your rib forward, spacing it up the body.
Now, are you counter wrapping that?
No.
Okay.
No. Stop at the back of the bead, a wrap, a few tight wraps, trim off your excess, and put either a whip finish or a half hitch. You know, half hitches you could do with a little half hitch tool. An old Bic pen works real good for doing that. I do a hand whip finish just because they work better. Now, one very important thing on anything that you have on dubbing, any insect, an aquatic insect, has gills along the side of the abdomen. And when underwater, those gills are very noticeable because those gills are how they breathe, and they're constantly fanning the water. So you want to take your dubbing needle, go in between your ribs, and pick some of that dubbing out. Pick that guard hair out. And that will help imitate the gills, because when natural dubbing, and this is why I always use natural dubbing material, when natural dubbing material gets wet, it breathes. Unlike synthetics, which stay stiff. This breathes and gives you a lot of movement.
I would imagine there's a touch to that you could perhaps dig too deep with the needle.
Yeah, you could snap your thread. You got to have a very sharp, pointy needle. Another thing that works very well is root canal screws. If you've ever had a root canal, they pull the tooth.
Yeah.
And they have this little tool that they screw down into the nerve to yank the nerve out. Well, it's a nice sort of bristly little ultra fine almost screw, which works very well for doing dubbing.
So you need a friend or a client who does root canals.
Who's a dentist, and or when next time you go to your dentist, ask him for one.
I know they do root canals. I run so fast in the other direction.
Oh yes. And it also, if somebody won't tell you where they're fishing, just show them one of those and you'll get it out of them.
Tell them you're a dentist.
Okay, the next step now is come up in front of the bead and put a couple of wraps on there. Then take your soft tackle. I prefer ruffed grouse. You really can't, it's a game bird, so
Right.
you can't
buy
legally buy it, so you have to go out and hunt your own down, and unless you shoot a lot for practice, you don't hit them. If you got to buy it, use Hungarian partridge, but brown phase, not the gray phase.
Okay.
It's, most places you'll go there and you'll have to dig through 20 of them to find a brown phase, but you want the brown phase. First step is take your hackle and pull all this fuzz off the bottom of the hackle. Okay, you don't want that fuzz on there. Grasp it right by the tip and gently fold it back. So you have a hackle that looks like that. Fold it back, lay it in, and tie over that fold. That does two things. One, it is catching material in the stem, and that pads the stem so you don't snap the feather stem. Trim off your excess. Now, spread your hackle. Basically, your hackle pliers, twist your hackle around. And again, always end up with whatever you're tying off in your front hand. Wrap. Get rid of your excess feather shank. Push it back and wrap a small head on it. Then whip finish your head off. Either whip or half hitch. And I got into the habit 50 years ago. I always put on my head cement before I cut the thread.
Before you cut, and any reason why, or just habit?
Yeah, if your knot isn't good, it'll hold it together. Put a touch of head cement on there, or in this case, fingernail polish.
Yeah, either or.
It's readily available, and it actually works better because it has more solvent, and because all the thread is pre-waxed, a lot of the cements don't hold on the pre-waxed thread.
It also, I think it soaks in a little bit, you know,
Yes.
And it's less, there's a viscosity to some of the head cements.
Yes.
That I think cause it to gum around the eye of the hook, whereas you put the nail polish on it, just
It
right
soaks
where you
in.
want it to be.
Trim your excess, and always finish up by sticking your dubbing needle in the eye and cleaning it. Because if you don't, guaranteed, this is the fly you're going to put on just at dark and go nuts trying to stick your leader through a glued up eye.
Which is always a lot of fun.
Which is always a lot of fun.
And the darker it is, the closer to twilight it is, actually, the worse it is.
Right, exactly. So that's why you always clean it when you're done. And that's here's your soft hackle.
And it's a great looking fly.
They work extremely well. You want to tie some with weight, some without weight, so you could fish them different places in the water column.
And you can vary the tones and the colors of that.
You can vary the sizes and colors to match whatever the predominant nymph is. These also work extremely well tied in greens and tans to imitate emerging caddis. They work very well for that.
It really is a great looking fly, and I just learned a lot from that segment. We are going to take a break. Then we'll be back. We're going to talk to Jim a little more about tying. We're going to talk about some of the events coming up and keep getting you ready for trout season. You're listening to and watching for the first time Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop on HANradio.com.
I'm John KOVACH, and you're listening to Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop on HANradio.com. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the New England coast, this is a unique place to shop. The Dock Shop, 51 Tokenique Road, Darien. Visit us at dockshop.com.
Healthy, confident smiles begin at Stratford Orthodontics. Conveniently located on Main Street, we are Stratford's hometown orthodontist. We offer the latest in orthodontic technology, including Damon braces and Invisalign. We always accept new patients. Call today to schedule a complimentary consultation. 203-375-8332. Stratford Orthodontics, 2499 Main Street, Stratford. 203-375-8332. And online at stratfordsmile.com.
Ever wonder why a story becomes news? Find out each Friday on Behind the News on HANradio.com. We'll bring in the newsmakers from around Connecticut and the journalists who cover them. Who is making the news? What did they do? Where did it happen? When and how did that story unfold? Find out on Behind the News, hosted by Kate Chaplinsky, John KOVACH, and myself, Josh Fisher. Fridays at noon on HAN Radio.
Hersam Acorn and HANradio.com.
Welcome back to Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop on HANradio.com. John KOVACH, Don Eng at the radio controls, Marty Hersam running the video, and Jim TURECEK teaching me how to tie flies, because I learned more in that 20, 25-minute segment about tying than I think I ever have. And I am indebted to you on that.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've been teaching this in classes and private lessons for 40 years, so you sort of learn what helps people doing it. But, explaining it like that, it's a lot slower than actually tying these.
Right. How long would it take you without somebody peppering you with questions?
A bit under 3 minutes to tie one of these.
And without the splint?
Without the splint. Just a hair longer with the splint. But
yeah, it didn't seem to impede you at all.
No. When I used to tie commercially for a couple different shops, they would order a gross of a pattern at a time. And for instance, a divided wing dry fly, classic dry fly, I could do 12, 14 an hour. And at the time, back in the early 70s, for what I was getting paid per fly, I was making a lot more money than my buddies who were pumping gas or working at a grocery store, and I was getting to sit in my basement and do something I love to do. And the idea of tying a gross of flies makes you a better tyer. One tip I can give people is when you tie, don't sit down and tie 2 flies, 2 of a pattern. Tie a dozen of them and then look at them all. And guaranteed by the time you're done, you're going to want to take the first 2 apart because they don't look as good as the subsequent flies.
No, you figure out where to position the thread. You may not even realize you're doing it.
Right.
But you figure if I take it forward 2 wraps, if I move this back 2 wraps, if I move the bead here,
right.
And you're really dealing in such minuscule increments of measure.
The proportions are so tiny that it's extremely hard. And it's funny, in a number of different demos that I've done, people have asked, how did you know exactly how much dubbing material? Because when you tied it off, you tied off on thread, not dubbing material. And I said, tie 1,000,000 flies. It comes to you. There's really, I can't tell you why I know exactly how much to do. I've done so many thousands, hundreds of thousands of flies that you just sort of see. You can see how much you need, and that's what you put on.
Is that your go-to pattern?
Early season, that's a real good pattern. I will fish a lot of times early season, one of those with a green latex caddis hanging under it. And the green latex caddis will catch the eye of the fish that have been in the river for the winter because they've been feeding on those. And the gold ribs hare's ear, which has a little more flash, will get the fresh stockers.
And that's the bigger meal that they're looking for.
Right.
The green caddis is almost like the worm.
Right, and it's very small. But with these, for the most part, I'll tie the gold rib hare's ear one from number 12 down to a number 20. And, vary the size depending on the prey species that are there.
Now, Jim, if somebody wants to reach you for guiding or for instruction or to speak to a group, how can they get you?
Easiest way is call me on the phone. It's 203-734-8406. They could email me at jturecek at sbcglobal.net. Don't expect it fast then because I don't look at the computer. I'm not on the water as much as I am because I sit in front of a computer.
Yeah, we've learned. I do a lot of emailing with you because I know you're on the water, but I also know it's quicker to get you by the phone.
Oh, it's a lot faster to get me by phone. At least you'll talk to a human then, and somebody who'll give me a message.
And I would recommend, and hopefully you're going to want to hunt Jim down for some instruction and some guiding. We've got one more break to take. We're going to take a real quick break, come back, run down some events that are coming up as we get ready for trout season. You're listening to and watching the Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop on HANradio.com.
Just because it's no longer boat or beach season, you don't have to abandon your lifestyle. At the Dock Shop, it's beach season all year long. The Dock Shop has just loaded up many new products that are perfect for the gift-giving season. Fishing tackle, jewelry, nautical-themed accessories, lighting, tableware, and more. Are you heading out for a tropical winter getaway? Come by the Dock Shop and check out styles by Margaritaville Apparel, Montauk Tackle, Game Guard, and others. Stop in at the Dock Shop and enjoy the New England coast all year long. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the New England coast, this is a unique place to shop. The Dock Shop, 51 Tokenique Road. Visit us at dockshop.com.
Does advertising on HANradio.com work? Just ask Coastal Orthopedics. They ran spots with us, and within 24 hours they had 21 walk-ins and 8 calls to their new immediate care center. To advertise on HANradio.com, call 203-417-5199 and ask for Marianne Hersam.
Hersam Acorn and HANradio.com.
Welcome back to Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop, HANradio.com, our first streaming video in addition to streaming audio episode. We thank Jim TURECEK for coming on, spending some time teaching us how to tie a soft hackle. I love having you on. It's great, too, to have you come by in the studio. Now, last time we had you on, we were talking about and showing some of the knives that you make. What's going on with those?
I'm in the middle of knife making classes that I teach for a few adult eds and working to get a few pieces done. The Northeast Cutlery Collectors are having their big yearly show out at the Mystic Hilton, which is right across the street from the Mystic Aquarium. And first weekend in May, the 2nd and 3rd, they put on a really good show of not just custom knives, but antique knives. A lot of the members display their collections of antique knives and Civil War surgical implements and
that's gotta be fascinating.
Anything cutlery involved with cutlery. And the wonderful thing about the displays is the collectors who are there are phenomenally educated about what their collections are. And we have a lot of people who come who they saw it because they were at the aquarium, who are just astounded. They think a knife is a knife, and then they come in and realize how much there is about it, the history and the collecting and how much is involved.
I can't even begin to imagine. I think I'm going to keep my focus on fishing for at least the time being.
Oh, yes.
Speaking of which, Connecticut Fly Fishermen's Association, their monthly meeting for April will be their fly tying roundtable. That is April 8th, 7 p.m. It's open to the public free of charge. It is at the Veterans Memorial Clubhouse at 100 Sunset Ridge in East Hartford. April 9th will be the next Housatonic Fly Fishermen's Association monthly meeting. Tori Collins, who's very well versed in the Hoosie and the Farmington, he's going to talk about nymph fishing and popular techniques. Look at the hatches on the Housatonic and the Farmington. That meeting, 7 o'clock Thursday, April 9th, St. Paul's Episcopal, 65 North Main Street in Wallingford. The Milford Recreation Department and the Connecticut Aquatic Resource Education Program, that is CARE, and we'll be doing a segment on them soon. They're going to have a free trout fishing class Friday, April 17th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Margaret Egan Center at 35 Matthew Street in Milford. It is open to children of all ages. Information on that class in Milford from Chris DeForge, 203-283-3600. 3353. And at noon Saturday, April 18th, Marla Blair, who we just had on, will be doing how to get started in fly fishing, what to get and why, up at Cabela's in East Hartford. She's a lot of fun. She's a great teacher, too. That's going to do it for Yankee Fisherman, presented by the Dock Shop. We'll be back next week on audio and video. Till then, tight lines.
Oh, here's a little tip that I would like to relate.